Really got to try on that left-hand side. What happened?
But I'm going up and over and bloody head over biscuit. It wasn't enough stability there for myself, but no, I was busting for a bit to make this game. It didn't seem to work out.
Hello, cheers, and welcome to the Scrum of the Earth podcast, the weekly show for news, reviews, great interviews, and so much more, all about the world of rugby. As always, my name is David Lawrence. I'm an American rugby fan who follows the game wherever I can find it all over the globe. If you'd like to get in touch, I'm easy to find on all your socials. You can always just drop an email to thescrumoftheearth@gmail.com. Well, we had our usual club competitions this weekend, but we also had some tasty internationals, so why don't we get this bad boy on the road? So, of course, starting as always with our current updates, this week, we went to a Worcester Red Sox game. We went to see them for the last time. We're going to see them this season. As regular listeners surely know, I don't actually care about baseball as a sport to follow, but going to a minor league game in a matinee time slot, I mean, it's a beautiful experience. This team does it just right. I've been saying this for a long time. Rugby in the States could do well to steal some ideas from the minor leagues because they just really know how to entertain an entire family for upwards of 3 hours, though, of course, the pitch clock has greatly improved that total time commitment. So we've gone to maybe 5 games this year. So what made this one so special? Why is this worth mentioning all of a sudden? Well, this time, we turned out to be the 500,000th customers this season. As we walked in, the mascots and some team ambassadors, I guess you could call them, stopped us at the entrance to tell us we'd won a special prize. They gave us a big bucket of swag, upgraded our seats to a private suite. The team president let us try on 4 actual Red Sox World Series championship rings. So the entire day was magical. The clincher, however, as if there needed to be one, was this. So my entire life, never have I caught a foul ball, never even gotten close. This weekend, my partner and I both said, well, if there's ever a day to catch a foul ball, it's going to be today because we're so lucky today. Sure enough, in the top of the 4th, by the way, I don't know what's better, the team name or the player name, a Toledo mud hen, gotta love these names, a Mudhen player named Justice Bigby. He pegged a foul that perfectly sort of found its way through the little tiny hole in the netting to come sailing right onto our little balcony. We didn't even have to attempt to catch it. It just whomped off the wall behind us and fell quite literally at our feet. We were unsuccessful later in our efforts to get Justice Bigby to sign it after the game, but I mean, that is hardly a complaint. It was literally the perfect day at the park. By the way, our team also won, and we got to watch a grand slam at the same time. Meanwhile, where is she? Isa, where are you?
It's too good. People have to know.
Well, Isa, it is good news, at least for me, I would say, because the USA wheelchair rugby team just won another medal. They won silver at the Paralympic Games. That made 7 consecutive medals. Quoting here from a website I can only assume is the Minnesota Public Radio site, quote, Minneapolis native Chuck Aoki and the Team USA wheelchair rugby team won a silver medal Monday after losing the gold medal match in Paris to Japan by a score of 48-41, a close one. So Aoki, he scored 14 tries in the match, meaning he was able to cross Japan's try line with 2 wheels while also holding the ball. The second place finish adds to Aoki's Paralympic medal total. He's helped the USA wheelchair rugby team claim 2 silver medals and a bronze medal in previous competitions. Aoki is one of 13 athletes from Minnesota competing in this year's games, unquote. So if you've never watched wheelchair rugby, like it's really exciting. I highly recommend it. You check it out. Goes without saying, it is a very different kind of competition, but if anything, it's kind of even more intense, like more rough and tumble than any 15-a-side test match. So that makes 2 medals within a month or so for USA programs with the word rugby in them. You know what? So I'm counting that as another win. Moving on to our thoughts of the week. My thoughts this week are actually on the ongoing saga of Louis Rees-Zammit. So for the record, I like the fact that the guy dropped a sure thing for an unknown. I think that was brave of him to do. I've always hoped that it might work out for him, but I can't say I've been optimistic. The funny thing is, when he got picked by the Kansas City Chiefs, the UK media, at least as far as I was able to perceive it, was like, he made it. His dreams come true. He's Patrick Mahomes' best friend. Like, he seemed to completely, all the media I saw seemed to completely misunderstand how this process actually works in the NFL. But now, after he failed to make that 53-man roster for the Chiefs and got waived, the headlines were all the opposite. It was, the dream is over. Louis Rees-Zammit, dreams crushed, and so forth. The dream is definitely not over. I saw he's been picked up by the Jaguars for their practice squad. The Chiefs already had someone from the IPP, and they favored keeping that guy, who's, I think, a defensive tackle. The Jags, though, they're happy to have him, as it costs them literally nothing. It's quite possible he could make pretty good money as a practice squad player for several years. The fact is, the money he could make doing so would put him right at the high end of what he could make playing rugby. My only question is, what does he want? He strikes me as someone who likes to be in the spotlight. It seems pretty unlikely that he'll ever get that in the NFL. He could go back to rugby and make less, but be a massive star again, or he can stay here and make nice money, but never be seen on television. Anyway, it's my hope that whatever he chooses, he's happy with it. Frankly, I'd love to stop hearing about it. I would much rather, just see him scoring tries, of course. So, anyway, that brings us, of course, to our reviews. Little side note as we start off our reviews here. This weekend, things are a little different to our usual format. So we spend, as you know, a lot of time covering the NPC, the National Provincial Championship in New Zealand. But this week, we had a very special guest to cover all of the action this week. So it's not going to be in this show. I was incredibly excited to finally sit down with Joel Hintz, the amazing Joel Hintz, on the show just a couple days ago. He was kind enough to share his insights as well as to go over all the actions from the NPC this round. The audio version of that pod is already available wherever you get your podcast normally. I haven't posted the video to YouTube yet. Basically, we had a massive snafu AV-wise as we started recording, which is so embarrassing. I literally do AVs for a living, and when I'm like, hey, let's go, oh, it doesn't work. It's just, oh my gosh. Anyway, the problem is we ended up using Zoom. My video looks like hot garbage. His video looks fine. So I guess I'm probably going to end up adding it to the YouTube channel in the next day or two. Anyway, we're going to start off instead with some of our internationals. The boringly named Rugby Championship kicked back into action with the Pumas hosting the Wallabies in Argentina. Really good match. The Aussie pods I've been listening to this week, they were very optimistic about the Aussies' chances, and I did not share that sentiment. Granted, the Pumas, they're prone to absolute no-shows, but after that win in Wellington, I just felt like they were looking at this year as a real opportunity to reclaim some status on the world stage. Weird side note, a few days ago, this game was listed as being at 11:55 p.m. Friday night, where I am. But by late Friday afternoon, it had completely disappeared from the list. It then popped up as being on Saturday evening. So, I mean, even right now, I don't feel 100% certain I know which match came first in the BNRC, but this is the order I wrote down, so we're sticking with it. Anyway, it was a beautiful sort of film noir kind of atmosphere, some heavy rains. The home team, they struck first, with the visitors unable to get anything going on attack, but still showing that scramble defense that's kept them from getting blown out recently. Noah Lolesio, he nailed a kick, by the way, thanks to Brett Mackay for the pronunciation key there, to give his team a lead. It was a 1-point lead for the Wallabies with about a quarter hour left to play. Australia, they looked like they had decided one thing: play. Like at one point, they put together 27 consecutive phases, but they got exactly 0 points for out of it for their efforts. The comms were already heavily hinting the Pumas would come out on top. Not cool, guys. Anyway, late on, when Joe Schmidt brought on Max Jorgensen for Andrew Kellaway, I was like, oh, okay. This is it. He's actively telling us he's willing to experiment. He's going to roll the dice. I think it speaks, frankly, to a long-range vision, though. I mean, I know he's only under contract for a couple of years. I mean, much like I say about Wales, the rugby universe, to me, feels better, more correct when the Australian team is good, and I'm frankly kind of optimistic about Schmidt's leadership. Anyway, Argentina retook the lead to the roar of the crowd. 2 points separating the teams with 10 minutes remaining. Breathless stuff. You got to mention him. Augustin Creevy, he came in at that point, 39 years old, getting his 110th cap for the Pumas, the most all-time. What a legend. Such a great player, and by all accounts, an amazing guy as well. Either way, Jorgensen, he kind of muffed a pass out wide on a nice breakaway. It just felt like, yep, seen this before. This one's all done, but we were in for one last curveball. Australia worked it down and somehow got themselves a penalty, coolly nailing it to retake the lead as the clock went red. But you could hear just before the kick, the ref specifically telling Argentina there will be time for a restart. But then, nope, game over. Very, very odd. But when it was all said and done, final score 19-20. By the way, Australia, Argentina, and New Zealand all have exactly one win in this tournament. Who saw that coming? Anyway, Saturday morning, of course, it was the All Blacks. They were, according to my oh-so-scientific preparations and predictions, ready for a bit of a trouncing as they faced the Springboks at Ellis Park, which, of course, was stuffed to the gills, absolutely bumping. They really know how to make a big occasion out of it. The All Blacks seemed unperturbed by the din, but as someone who tends to support New Zealand, I just had a really bad feeling as things got started. So if I saw the numbers right, it was the 107th test between these nations over the course of 103 years. Both teams had what I thought were mildly off-kilter rosters, a few new faces on both sides, but once things kicked off, it was business as usual for the top two teams in the world. Yes, I know that's not what the official rankings say, but let me live. Anyway, a potentially big shift in momentum fairly early on, where it looked like the Box had gotten a timely turnover, but after some chat among the officials, it was reversed, and Afalele Fase, he got shown a yellow card. Would the Kiwis be able to make some points out of it? Yes, the answer was yes. Cody Taylor smashing through for the first score of the night. It felt like they'd need to get more, though, to me, while the opportunity was there. The Box are way too dangerous to keep close. So I swear, I realized as I was watching, I get way too worked up during these fixtures, like New Zealand versus South Africa, Scotland versus England, USA versus anybody. I just have a hard time keeping my emotions under control while I'm watching. I honestly have started doing these little things like finding things to distract myself so that I don't just get totally overwhelmed. So at this point in the match, I can report that the score was 8-12 just after the half-hour mark, and I had managed to watch 6 trailers for movies that I might be watching later that evening with my son. The host nation got 3 more points before the break, making it 11-12, and another 1-point nail-biter at the break. All gods spare me. In the second half, famous Dubliner Jordy Barrett intercepted a pass, ran it in, defenders hanging off of him like lampreys, but they were soon down at the other end, knocking on the door. Side note, did you see Cheslin Kolbe smashing into Scott Barrett and putting him on his backside? Like, how on earth did that even happen? So is his scrum cap maybe lead-weighted or something? One more side note. I heard some so-called experts this week explaining, very importantly, that the bomb squad, it's misnamed and they don't come in all at once. It's not a squad that appears all at once. They slowly trickle in over time, they told us, which sounded suspicious to me from what I've been watching. Surely enough, at 44 minutes, numbers 16, 17, 18, 20, and 22 all came in at the exact same time together. So I don't even know how to answer that, finish that sentence. Anyway, another random side note. I've been trying to figure out how to describe Jesse Creel to people. Like, so I think I finally got it. Do you know the artist who did the covers for Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas and like most Hunter S. Thompson books? Jesse Creel looks like Ralph Steadman was commissioned to draw a rugby player. That's right. We've gone 2 or 3 levels more niche than usual this week. Enjoy the ride. Anyway, Curtly Arnsa got clearly knocked out by the swashbuckling elbows of Rico Ioane, sending him to the lockers and causing a pinch in the substitutions, with Handré Pollard swapping into the inside center slot as the only remaining back on the bench. I wondered if this might be the first time Rassie's controversial selections might backfire. Of course, another penalty kept things painfully close, and I started Googling emergency heart medications available for instant delivery, 17-22 with a half hour to go, and I put my own survival odds at like 50-50. Anyway, entering that final 10 minutes, it was Quagga Smith again, piercing through to get the box within 3. Moments later, they got another try to take the lead. New Zealand just ran out of options. An absolute gut punch defeat, letting a 10-point lead slip through their fingers. The world's best team triumphed yet again, 31-27. It was crushing. But, I guess at least it pretty much went the way I expected, which kind of dulled the sting like a tiny bit, maybe? Not really. Anyway, 2 losses in the last 3 tests for Razors All Blacks. Is this the week that we start to hear about how they should really consider firing him? Anyway, I'm even right now, just barely keeping it together. Like, by the way, I honestly feel like I've basically been kicked in the head. Anyway, we got to move on. We're going to stick with the internationals, though. This weekend was also the second leg of the Pacific Nations Cup, which meant Samoa hosting Tonga on Friday and my USA Eagles hosting Canada on Saturday. Of course, the first fixture, it was a clear, hot day at Apia Park. It was Samoa getting on the board first, getting a try at the tail end of the first quarter of play. It was a great scene where some, this was the best. Some flag waving supporters kind of hopped over the fence and tried to get the crowd going with some dance moves. They had to be escorted back to the actual seating area by the police. And the comms chimed in. They said, "Sir, those moves are just too sharp. They could be dangerous. We can't have you on the field." Good work by the comms. Anyway, side note, Ben Tamifuna, he is so gigantic, and he uses that fact to sort of play like he's a wrecking ball. But more and more, to me at least, it seems like he comes off worse for these collisions. Like, has he just been doing it for too long, maybe? So he's 33. He might not be looking to change his style at this point, but I feel like adding, I don't know, a bit of footwork might extend his professional life, you know what I mean? Either way, Tonga, they couldn't get anything going on attack. Their hosts enjoyed a 17-0 advantage at halftime. As the players returned to the field, they gave us a great shot of the Manu Samoa Old Boys. It was just a sea of purple polo shirts on smiling gentlemen, the litany of names. It was an absolute who's who of Samoan World Cup history. So cool. So Tuna Tuatama, the 7-star, he got a brace early in the second half. The home team were already up 29-0 when Tonga kissed. Yes, they kissed their first points. They kicked their first points of the match with about a half hour left to go. They put together a nice little run, getting 2 tries from the deceptively quick number 8, Fine Anisi, but Samoa, they reasserted themselves late, got a big win at home, defeating their century-old rival 43-17, a huge turnaround from that for them from last week. Of course, coming back over here to the States, the Eagles were in California to face our perpetual foes from the Great White North. Canada, it felt like a lot was riding on this game, given just how bad Canada have been and how obviously unqualified their coach is. Just my opinion. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to watch this one live, and Rugby Pass TV botched the replay video. Okay, cards on the table. In their defense, it was actually my screw up, because when they did screw up the video replay, but stupid me forgot it was also on Peacock. It was sitting there the whole time. Their replay worked just fine. Naturally, by the time I had realized this, of course, it had been, I had long since seen the score, along with some unflattering impressions of both teams' performances, though I was obviously happy my Eagles got a win 28-15 in LA. This was definitely a must win for me, for the USA. So despite an underwhelming performance, we got what we needed out of it. Mitch Wilson, he had a standout game, playing some hard-nosed defense. Greg Peterson, he seemed like a good choice for captain for this one. Recent MLR runner-up Connor Mooneyham, he got himself a brace. And I liked what I saw in the highlights from Pano Davis and Sean McNulty, who earned their first Eagles caps in the final quarter. I don't know what to say about Canada that I haven't already said before. Like, they've been on a terrible, terrible streak. It seems to be trickling down from where I sit from the coaching, but they, of course, gave Kingsley Jones an extension when the entire rest of the world thought that they should have already shown him the door. But to be honest, it pains me. First, because they seem like great people, our neighbors to the north. It's impossible not to love the Canadians. Plus, many of them are New England Free Jacks, and I hate seeing them losing all the time. Q, if you're listening and you need a place to stay at my house, maybe to get USA residency, I've got a spare couch and plenty of pillows. So anyway, switching gear back over to New Zealand, it was on to the FPC, the Farrah Palmer Cup. I already mentioned we did cover the NPC in our chat with Joel Hintz. Definitely check that out if you haven't yet. He's just brilliant. But meanwhile, also in the Aotearoa was, of course, the FPC, which has been great this season. We kicked off with the Taranaki women versus Otago Spirit. You know what? This matchup is a bruiser. It is just smash mouth from start to finish. Georgia Cormack, she was the first one to get over the line. What is with awesome players named Georgia, by the way? Anyway, after another almost identical score, the comms proclaimed that makes it Georgia Cormack 14, Taranaki 0. Otago pretty well destroyed their hosts by the end. It was 5-40 at halftime and 17-60 by full time. Quote, "They'll be well pleased after the long trip up from Dunedin," unquote, said the comms. The Hawke's Bay Tui, they got pretty well smacked around by Bay Plenty Volcanics, who waltzed into the Mitre 10 Sports Complex and won comfortably 26-47. Meanwhile, over at the FMG, the Waikato women were heard to say 47? Is that all you got? Before almost quadrupling the score of their opponents, Auckland Storm, a massive 65-17 win for them. Next up, the Tasman women were on the wrong side of a similarly lopsided scoreline against Manawatu Cyclones, who won 17-55 away. Anyway, then it was time, of course, for our game of the week. I don't even know if you can tell on YouTube how bad the resolution is of this graphic, but you try finding great graphics from the weekend, because the FPC does not get covered except by me, it seems like. Anyway, it was a fantastic game. It was Wellington Pride versus North Harbour Hibiscus. The calmly named Jerry Collins Stadium there in the capital city was the venue. Eerie side note, they played the final Hooter sound to start the match, which I just found really confusing and off-putting. But fortunately, the players, they didn't seem to take notice. Anyway, some sloppy ball handling just in the first few minutes, but the Pride looked like they'd surely win the power battle. I foresaw a score that tilted in their favor more and more as things wore on. So after the home team scored 2 quick tries before even 10 minutes had passed, the visitors looked to deflate a bit. I was worried it might get out of hand. Sasagawa, the right winger for the Hibiscus, she looked really elusive on attack. She has so many tools, but she also, I don't know, she might have been trying to do it all herself. Not a good sign. Quote, "Can they break this Wellington defense?" unquote, asked the comms as they approached the break with no points to show for their efforts. Answer turned out to be yes, and to their credit, it was only 17-7 at the intermission, so North Harbour still had a shot. Sure enough, they got within 3, and a yellow card to the Wellington tight head might have opened the door a bit, but in the end, Wellington, they were too much. It was never the one-sided affair I had feared, however, but 36-21 was your final score. Finally, Counties Monaco Heat versus the Northland women closed out the round with a very similar scoreline, Counties winning 35-26. Great stuff. Let's see if I can get to our next slide here. Yes, exciting, fun times down in the Curry Cup. It was the penultimate round of the Curry Cup as well. That meant my Griquas were home for the unpredictable Cheetahs. The comms, they set us up by saying, "There's a derby in the Diamond City today, here on the fringes of the Free State." That, I don't know, that really psyched me up. Anyway, my Griquas, they were already out of any contention, but the Cheetahs had a lot to fight for and plenty of fans in attendance to provide support. By the way, Cheetahs fans are awesome. They don't just wear Cheetahs jerseys. They make vests, hats, pants, flags. They're like watching Etsy shops for niche rugby gear. It's so cool. I have so much time for them. Anyway, quick side note, Daniel Kasende, he led the visitors onto the field for his 50th appearance, but he'll actually be playing in the URC this coming season, having signed with the Ospreys. That's a nice little bit of business for them. It took him all of 45 seconds to get an acrobatic finish in the left corner. The comms shouted, "Postman Dan delivers." Okay, we might have to calm down on that one. So my guys looked like they were running away with it, but teams in this comp, They love scoring points. The Cheetahs, they came roaring back, securing themselves a bonus point try, which might make a difference for their chances to stay in that top 4. All eyes will be on the Pumas match against the generically named Western Force on Sunday. Final score in Kimberley, 44-31. Just the 3rd win of the year for my Griquas. So our game of the week, of course, I mean, it had to be this. It was, of course, the Bulls versus the Lions. It was really cool. They staged this match at a school called Midstream College. It doesn't sound like necessarily a destination, but anyway, they said it was the first time they had done such a thing, though I wasn't clear if they meant, using a college facility in general or if Midstream, or the college in particular, not university. So that college is located in Olifantsfontein. No idea if I said that right, but if you don't want to try to say it, you can just call it Clayville, a nickname that it's had since 1940. So some serious star power in these two lineups. Notably, Kanan Moody was back at fullback for the Bulls after being released from Springboks camp earlier in the week. It was a great day for a great matchup. The students on hand were particularly enthusiastic. Just a great atmosphere overall. They were, of course, a bit shocked to see the Bulls getting pushed around a bit. However, they gave their guests a 19-point cushion before getting their first points. It was 14-33 as the teams went into their dorms. Very late, the Bulls got a great try to add a bit of respectability to the scoreline, but it was the Lions all the way, an impressive win over their only sort of true rivals this year. The visitors adding an insult to injury try right at the death. The final score was 33-57 at the Midstream. So after that, the Sharks, they were at home in the cavernous stadium in Durban to host the Two More Chances Griffins. You had to wonder how Makazole Mopimpi felt starting on the wing for like the most confusing team in this competition, rather than making breaks out wide against the ABs at Ellis Park. Ironically, they're very similar venues with very different attendance figures right now. This one, a bit tough to watch, mostly because the producers had 2 audio feeds going at the same time. By the way, don't get me wrong, I love the fact that these broadcasts are available in English, Afrikaans, and Xhosa, but please, just one at a time, all right? Like, in any event, the Sharks, they hit the 40-point mark before we even got to halftime. It was another embarrassing day for the Griffins, who were down to one final shot at getting a win this year, and it went down in flames, 75-19. So to finish off the weekend in the Currie Cup, the generically named Western Province, they faced the Pumas. I love the drama coming into this fixture. So even more so, I loved the atmosphere of the venue. Nestled in the city of Oaks, they said. The Donnie Craven Stadium, as my friend Hugh from the Pirate Rugby podcast pointed out, Monty Lobach was going to be starting for them at 10. By the way, it was hard to miss Stephen Kitsoff and Joseph Dweba out there as well. After a while, I also realized they had Dave Ewers out there as well. Both teams seemed to realize the gravity of this weekend. It was a close one with just 5 points separating the teams with about maybe a half hour to go. A third try from Courtnall Skosan put the home team back up 2. Despite a furious push by the Pumas, Western Province would indeed hold on, eventually taking down their guests 37-30. It was no big surprise considering that selection. The Pumas must have felt like, what the heck? Like, this is not the team you fielded even 2 weeks ago. Anyway, all of this, of course, sets up a beautiful final weekend. The Lions and the Bulls locked into those top 2 spots, but the Pumas, they face Cheetahs to see who nabs 3rd place. And if my math is right, there is an outside chance that if Cheetahs win and deny the Pumas any points at all, generically named Western Province get a bonus point win over the Griquas, they could sneak into that 4th slot through a better points differential. How crazy would that be? And how much would those other teams just be worrying, given the roster that we now know that these baby Stormers can field? Unbelievable. Well, by the music, you'll know it's time for this week's Diamond in the Ruck Award. This week, the award goes to Luke Carty. Mr. Carty, you led our USA Eagles to a much-needed win over Canada this weekend to secure a semifinal spot in the Pacific Nations Cup. I didn't get to watch, but your performance earned you Player of the Match honors, and you came through right when we needed you. Afterwards, you said, "We worked pretty hard the last 2 weeks. We were away in camp in Chula Vista. We all just stuck to the script. We worked pretty hard to get over the line. The forwards did their job, which made it pretty easy for me. And all in all, the result was the result of our hard work the last 2 weeks. So I think we are pretty happy with it," unquote. When they catch them right after the game, it's hard to get the greatest quotes out of them. But Luke Carty, congratulations and thank you to you. You are this week's Diamond in the ruck. Well done, my friend. Let's get this stopped and let's get this back here. Okay. That, of course, brings us to our updates and previews. That brings us, by the way, quick question. What is the most insane thing I could mention when I talk about, what's coming up next? If you were going to say that the top 14 is back, you would have guessed correctly. Is there any way at all that it makes any kind of reasonable sense that the top 14 is back this coming weekend? No, it's impossible. But that's the beauty of the top 14, I guess. Anyway, round 1 does kick into gear on Friday, oddly enough, with all 7 matches taking place simultaneously. Newly promoted Vannes, they start the year at home against Toulouse. Oh, yeah, great. Apparently the schedulers are massive sadists. We have a clear game of the week candidate in my lovely UBB taking on Stade Francais, or as I like to call them, the drink boxes. Clermont, they're home for Pau. Montpellier face Lyon. Castres, they're home for Racing 92. Bayonne take on Perpignan. La Rochelle look to start better than they did last year as they face Toulon. Meanwhile, it's the final round of the Currie Cup. There still could be some movement before we know for sure who that top 4 are going to be this weekend. We've got my Griquas versus the generically named Western Province. The Lions look to leave the hapless Griffins winless for the year. The Sharks face the Bulls, but the big one, it's got to be the Pumas hosting the Cheetahs. Should be an absolute cracker. In the NPC, the Storm Week fixture tomorrow morning, as I sit here now, it's going to be Waikato versus Northland. By the way, I have some lovely things to chat about for Northland next week. I can't wait. Then we've got another full slate. It's Bay of Plenty versus Manawatu, Auckland versus North Harbour, Wellington versus Southland, Otago versus Canterbury, Hawke's Bay versus Tasman. The clear and obvious game of the week with the Ranfurly Shield on the line once again. Oh my God, that's going to be so good. Taranaki versus Waikato in a clash of recent champs. And then finally, Counties Monaco facing Northland, who are back on the docket again for the twice in the week because of the Storm Week. Over in the FPC, rather, we've got Auckland Storm versus Counties Monaco Heat, Northland Women versus Canterbury Women, Tasman Women versus Taranaki Women, Otago Spirit versus Wellington Pride, and then finally, the Waikato Women will be facing the Hawke's Bay Tui. And of course, we've got more international action on tap. The Pacific Nations Cup and the boringly named Rugby Championship. Argentina will be looking to, right the ship against the Wallabies. Are they just going one good game, one bad game? Is that the whole thing with them now? Is that the entire thing that the Pumas are giving us now? Because it kind of feels that way. Meanwhile, South African fans are going to be gearing up to be as obnoxious as humanly possible during the next haka as they face New Zealand. Tonga are home for Fiji. And my USA Eagles will face a tougher test against Japan over in the land of the rising sun. How are we going to cover all of this, you ask? Well, the answer is very simple. I have no idea. Well, my friends, that does it for another week. This is only our second ever live stream for our weekly episode. I'm doing a bad job, frankly, of advertising ahead of time when these things are going to be available. My apologies if you're like, what? I missed it again? My apologies. I'll get better at it. In the meantime, if you do find our little YouTube channel, like, subscribe, do all the nice things. We would really appreciate it. Anyway, that does it for this week. I was not prepared for all the things coming down the pike so soon. It feels like the top 14 never even ended. And I noticed the URC is back on September 20th. So I'm kind of freaking out a bit with all the guests that I'm hoping to get lined up in the next couple of weeks. But we will see what we shall see, and I will do a better job, I promise, of getting you the information before it actually happens. So, to all of you across the globe, cheers. Talk to you soon, and be well.
It gives me great pleasure to be here today.
Oh, it does, neat. You want to tempt the wrath of the whatever from high atop the thing?